cops playing robbers. Yeah, and working with other.
What's played today, guys? Besides trying to dirty up some cops. Where's the fucking task force? Why hasn't the self piss and moan about him getting fucking promoted? Because now all the VCAT guys, not just the best.
Were you and Captain Velez close?
Everybody fucking knows you do. Convinced. Nobody's hoping for a confession. A lot of people believe in witches, and Shaggy believes in spirit.
Do they have spare fucking time?
Money. You know, we dope cops, so.
We'll open a fucking tank. Who's listening to the rest of the tank? Dumars say. Dude, DA doesn't have their own staging here? Hold on.
Until they catch our cop killer, no.
Of course, now is like handle your scandal up.
Picture this, 38 cops sitting in a room, staring at $20 million in cash. Not drug money they're supposed to log. Not evidence they're duty-bound to catalog. Just 20 million. Stacked, waiting. And here's the gut punch. Nobody's watching. No cameras in that room, no witnesses outside their circle. Just them and more money than most will earn in 10 lifetimes. That's where the rip drops you. Joe Carnahan's latest doesn't ease into its premise. It detonates it. This is a film that understands something fundamental about crime thrillers. The most terrifying heists aren't about stealing from banks or casinos. They're about good people discovering exactly how good they actually are when nobody's looking. When the system they've sworn to uphold creates the perfect opportunity to break it. When the line between protector and predator gets so blurred that you can't tell which side you're on anymore. Released January 16, 2026, exclusively on Netflix, The Rip arrived with the kind of pedigree that makes film nerds sit up straight. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck aren't just starring, they are producing through artist equity, the production company they founded to fundamentally restructure how Hollywood compensates talent. Carnahan, the director behind Narc and The Grey, writes and directs here, crafting what he's called the most morally complex project I've ever tackled. He's not overselling. The film carries a hefty $100 million budget, massive for a Netflix exclusive, especially one with an R rating that doesn't pull punches on violence or language. That money's on screen. Miami looks sun-scorched and lived in. The action sequences feel visceral rather than glossy. And the cast? Stack doesn't begin to cover it. Damon plays Luty, Dane Dumars, the veteran cop whose moral compass becomes the film's true north. Affleck is dead. Sergeant J.D. Byrne, his partner, and the film's beating heart of conflict. Stephen Yeun, Diana Taylor, Sasha Calle, Kyle Chandler, Scott Adkins, Catalina Sandino Moreno, Nestor Carbonell, and Lina Esco round out an ensemble where every actor has meaningful work to do. But here's what makes The Rip more than just another cops gone bad thriller. It's rooted in truth, uncomfortably so. The film draws inspiration from Miami-Dade County Sheriff Chris Casiano, though Carnahan has been careful to note this isn't a direct adaptation. It's a what-if scenario built on real-world foundations. The actual case involved law enforcement and allegations of corruption that sent shockwaves through Florida's police departments. Carnahan spent months researching not just that case, but dozens of similar incidents across the country. He interviewed former officers, both those who'd blown whistles and those who'd admitted to crossing lines. What emerged wasn't a simple story of bad cops doing bad things. It was something far more insidious, a portrait of institutional rot so normalized that good people genuinely believed they were owed compensation for risks the system undervalued. These aren't cartoonishly evil people, Carnahan told The Hollywood Reporter in January 2026. That would be easy to write. What's terrifying is that they are us, put in their situation, with their financial pressures, their family obligations, their years of service feeling unrewarded. How many of us can honestly say we'd walk away from that room? That question haunts every flame of the rip. The title itself is slang, cop terminology for a rip-off, the act of stealing confiscated goods or money. It's jargon most civilians never hear, a linguistic marker of the insular world Carnahan's depicting. Within police culture, ripping exists in a moral grey zone. Sometimes it's theft, sometimes it's appropriation of criminal assets, sometimes it's viewed as a form of street justice. The film doesn't bother explaining this to you upfront. It trusts you'll catch on as Dumars and his team navigate the elaborate justifications they construct for what they're about to do. Artists. Equity's involvement here matters more than standard production company credits usually do. Affleck and Damon founded the company in 2002 with a specific mission: ensure that everyone from stars to crew shares in a project's success. For the Rip, this meant structuring a deal where performance bonuses extended to below-the-line workers, gaffers, grips, editors, sound designers. Netflix agreed to a first-of-its-kind arrangement where if the film hit certain viewership thresholds, everyone got paid. Not just the above-the-line talent, everyone. The irony isn't lost. A film about cops rationalizing theft was made under a business model designed to address Hollywood's own systemic wage theft. Carnahan has acknowledged this meta layer in interviews, suggesting it informed the script's refusal to offer easy answers. We are making a movie that cost $100 million, critiquing people who steal because they feel undercompensated, he said. That's complicated. We leaned into that discomfort rather than away from it, and leaning in is exactly what The Rip does. The film opened to 41.6 million views in its first month, massive by any metric and enough to trigger those bonus payments. Critics landed at 84% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 64 Metacritic score, generally favorable but not without debate. The divide isn't about quality. Most agree Carnahan's crafted a technically proficient, superbly acted thriller. The split centers on the film's moral stance, or perceived lack thereof. Some critics praised its ambiguity as sophisticated moral complexity. Others accused it of both sides in corruption, of making police theft seem understandable rather than condemnable. That controversy, Carnahan welcomes it. If everyone left the theater with the same take, "I failed," he said. The Rip isn't interested in reassuring you that you'd be the hero in this scenario. It's interested in making you deeply, painfully uncertain. The production timeline itself was surprisingly swift for a project this ambitious. Carnahan completed the screenplay in 2024, incorporating story development work from Michael McGrail. Artists Equity greenlit it immediately, with Netflix coming aboard months later after what insiders described as a feeding frenzy among streamers and studios eager to work with Damon and Affleck's new venture. Filming took place entirely in Miami over 52 days in late 2024 and early 2025, with Carnahan insisting on practical locations wherever possible. Those 38 cops in a room with $20 million? That's not CGI money. That's prop currency stacked to accurate dimensions, shot in an actual Miami police administrative building during off hours. The weight of it, the visual presence. Carnahan wanted actors to feel the temptation physically, not imagine it against green screen. Damon and Affleck's chemistry anchors everything, which shouldn't surprise anyone who's followed their decades-long partnership. But this isn't the charming camaraderie of Good Will Hunting or the slick professionalism of the Ocean's films. This is weathered, weary, and increasingly hostile. Dumars and Byrne have been partners for years. They finish each other's sentences, cover each other's weaknesses, trust each other implicitly until they don't. The film charts the dissolution of that trust with surgical precision, showing how money doesn't just corrupt, it reveals. Every character believes they're the reasonable one, the moral center, the person with lines they won't cross, and every character is wrong. Steven Yeun's role, deliberately kept mysterious in marketing materials, provides the film's external pressure point. He is not a cop, but he is entangled in the situation in ways that force Dumars' team to make increasingly desperate choices. Yeun brings the same intensity he brought to Burning and Nope, quiet, watchful, dangerous in ways that don't announce themselves until it's too late. Teyana Taylor's detective Numa Baptiste might be the film's secret weapon. She is new to the unit, still earning trust, and therefore sees the corruption with fresh eyes unclouded by years of rationalization. Taylor, primarily known for music and dance before pivoting to serious dramatic roles, delivers a performance that's all coiled tension. She's the audience surrogate, the person asking, wait, are we really doing this? When everyone else has already convinced themselves it's justified. The supporting cast: Chandler as the department chief who may know more than he lets on, Atkins as the team's muscle with a surprisingly soft center, Moreno as a federal agent circling closer to the truth. They are not window dressing. Carnahan gives each of them moments that complicate the moral landscape, that suggest everyone in this ecosystem is compromised in ways large and small. Lina Esco's Captain Jackie Velez deserves particular mention. She's Dumars' supervisor, the person whose job it is to maintain integrity, and she's played with a fascinating opacity. You are never quite sure if she suspects, if she knows, if she's complicit, or if she's willfully blind. Esco plays her as someone who survived in a male-dominated department by knowing when to ask questions and when to look away. A survival strategy that takes on queasy resonance here. At 133 minutes, the rip is patient in ways modern thrillers rarely are. Carnahan doesn't rush to the money. The first act is all character establishment. Watching these cops do their jobs competently, heroically even, we see them genuinely protect and serve. We see them underpaid, underappreciated, stretched thin. We understand why when that 20 million appears, it doesn't feel like a moral test. It feels like a gift, like the universe finally evening the scales. That's the film's most unsettling achievement, making you understand without making you condone. The R rating isn't gratuitous, but it's earned. Violence in the rip is sudden, ugly, and consequential. When people get hurt, it matters. The language is the vernacular of actual cops, crude, dark-humored, desensitized. Carnahan's background includes extensive documentary work, and he brings that ear for authentic dialogue to every scene. These don't sound like actors reciting cop speak, they sound like cops. What Netflix has with The Rip is something increasingly rare, a big budget, star-driven thriller for adults that doesn't pander, doesn't simplify, and doesn't apologize for expecting its audience to sit with discomfort. In an era where studios chase broad appeal and streamers increasingly favor algorithm-friendly content, this is a gamble. That 100 million could have funded 10 mid-budget crowd pleasers. Instead, it funded one morally complex, deliberately provocative character study disguised as a heist thriller. And the gamble paid off. Those 41.6 million views represent people who could have chosen comfort food and chose this instead. A film that makes you complicit in its characters' rationalizations before pulling the rug out and forcing you to confront what you just condoned. So before we dive into how The Rip constructs its moral labyrinth scene by scene, let's be clear about what this film is doing. It's not asking whether you'd resist temptation. It's demonstrating that you probably wouldn't. That understanding yourself as fundamentally good doesn't protect you from fundamental moral failure. That corruption isn't always a dramatic fall. Sometimes it's just accepting that you've earned what you're taking. Now let's watch exactly how Joe Carnahan traps you in that logic. The film opens with hands. Close up, filling the frame. Dane Dumars' hands, specifically, wrapping white medical tape around already scarred knuckles. No music, just the sticky tear of adhesive, the deliberate ritual of preparation. The camera holds on this action long enough to make you wonder what we're preparing for. Boxing? A fight? Then we hear radio chatter, police codes, dispatch calls, and the context clicks. This is armor. Different kind, same purpose. Carnahan's not showing you a raid. Not yet. He's showing you the mundane ceremony that precedes violence, the way professionals mentally shift into combat mode. Dumars flexes his fingers, testing the wrap tension. The camera finally pulls back to reveal a locker room, fluorescent lights, scuffed floors, the institutional beige of underfunded public buildings. Other cops suit up around him, Kevlar vests, magazine checks. The choreography of people who've done this hundreds of times. Affleck's Byrne sits across from him, running through the operation brief one more time. Their dynamic establishes itself immediately through micro details. Byrne's doing most of the talking, but he's watching Dumars for confirmation on every point. Dumars nods or corrects with single words. This is a partnership where hierarchy exists but doesn't dominate. Dumars has rank. Byrne has Dumars' ear, and that's what actually matters in the field. Vegas people don't do sloppy, Byrne says, referencing the target we haven't met yet. Expect redundancy, expect guns, always do, Dumars replies. 2 words. Entire philosophy. The briefing scene does heavy lifting without feeling expository. We learn this is a cartel stash house raid, that the target is a mid-level distributor named Mateo Vega, that intelligence suggests significant cash and product on site. Captain Velez leads the briefing with bureaucratic efficiency. She's covering the departments as legally, making sure every procedural box is checked. Esco plays her with detached professionalism that could read as competence or calculated distance. Can't tell yet. That ambiguity matters. What Carnahan doesn't do is waste time on personal life setup. No scenes of Dumas at home with family, no girlfriend drama for Byrne, none of the typical here's what they have to lose exposition. We learn those details later when they're relevant. Right now, we're embedded with professionals doing a job. The film trusts that watching competence is inherently compelling. The raid itself unfolds with documentary realism. 3 vehicles, coordinated approach, breaching charge on the door. The sound design here, let's bookmark this for later because it's doing specific work. Everything's amplified and slightly distorted. The breach sounds like the world splitting open. Flashbangs are disorienting even through the camera. Shouted commands overlap into cacophony. This isn't John Wick balletic violence. This is chaos barely controlled through training. Dumars' team clears rooms with practiced efficiency. The operators move like water, flowing around obstacles, covering angles. When they encounter Vega's people, it's brief and brutal. Suspects on the ground, hands zip-tied, no unnecessary force but zero hesitation either. These cops are neither heroes nor villains yet, just professionals executing a warrant. They find exactly what intelligence promised. Product kilos of cocaine, vacuum sealed and stacked in a bedroom closet. Weapons throughout the house, none registered, all illegal for convicted felons to possess. And in the master bedroom, a false floor panel that Tiana Taylor's Baptiste discovers by noticing the boards sit differently. Watch this moment closely. Baptiste knew enough to feel proud of the find. She's proved her observational skills, earned respect. She calls Dumars over with genuine enthusiasm. Lieutenant, check this. Dumars kneels, prees up the panel. His face does something complicated when he sees what's underneath. Not quite shock. More like recognition of a problem he hasn't named yet. The camera pushes in slowly, revealing stacks of banded cash filling the subfloor space. A lot of cash, more than makes sense for a mid-level operation. That's not just Vega's money, Byrne says quietly, crouched beside Dumars. No, Dumars agrees. It's not. This exchange matters. They immediately understand this isn't one dealer's stash. This is pooled cartel resources, a reserve fund, possibly even leverage money meant for bribes or bond payments, which means it's accounted for, which means people will come looking for it, which means seizing it puts targets on their backs. But procedure is clear. They photograph everything in situ, document the discovery, begin the evidence collection process. This is where Carnahan's research into actual police work pays dividends. We watch the tedious, mandatory parts, evidence tags, chain of custody forms, photographs from multiple angles. The film doesn't rush past this. The bureaucracy is the point. Every step creates a paper trail that theoretically prevents corruption. Theoretically, Captain Velez arrives on scene, surveys the hall. How much? Won't know until we count it, Dumars says. Conservatively, high 7 figures, maybe 8. Velez absorbs this with a neutral expression. Count gets done at the station. Secure evidence. I want 2 officer minimum on transport, no exceptions. Standard protocol. Everything's by the book. Everyone's following procedures. And yet Carnahan's camera lingers on faces, tiny flickers of expression that suggest the mathematics. Everyone's quietly doing. How much is there? How much would I get if it was divided? How would anyone even know if some went missing? Nobody says these things. That's what makes the scene work. The temptation isn't vocalized because vocalizing it crosses a line. None of them are ready to cross yet, but it's present. Visible in the extra seconds someone stares at the cash before looking away. Present in the way Byrne and Dumars make eye contact and don't have to say a word. The transport sequence introduces the film's visual strategy for Paranoia. The 2 transport officers, we haven't learned their names yet because they're not primary characters, sit in the front of an armored van with millions in the back. Carnahan shoots from inside the van, looking out through the windshield at Miami traffic. Ordinary cars take on sinister possibility. that sedan that's been behind them for 3 blocks, cartel surveillance, the motorcycle that pulls alongside at a red light, scout calling in their position. Nothing happens. They arrive at the station safely. But the seeds planted, possessing this much criminal money makes you a target. Taking it would make you a target from different directions simultaneously. The counting room scene is where everything tips. It's a secure space in the station's evidence wing. Reinforced door, card key access, camera coverage, except, and this is delivered in a throwaway line from another officer, the cameras in this particular room have been on a repair backlog for 3 weeks. Budget cuts. They'll get fixed eventually. Meanwhile, officers counting evidence do so without video documentation. This is the institutional rot Carnahan's interested in. Not dramatic corruption, but mundane system failure that creates opportunity. Nobody decided to create this vulnerability. It emerged from underfunding, deferred maintenance, bureaucratic indifference. And now 38 cops are going to count billions in a room. Nobody's watching. Dumars registers this information with visible unease. So does Veles. But what are they going to do? Refuse to count the money until cameras get fixed? That could take months. Evidence has to be processed. The system's built to keep moving even when parts of it aren't functioning. So everyone proceeds, because proceeding is what you do. The count takes hours. Officers rotate in shifts. Each bundle gets tallied, recorded on spreadsheets, cross-checked. It's mind-numbing work that the film depicts in time-compressed montage stacks of bills, clicking counters, scratched notes. The number climbs. 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, 15 million. When they finish, Byrne delivers the total to the room, $20,478,600. Even. The even is interesting. Cartel money usually comes in round numbers. Psychological round, like 20 million flat. The extra 478,600 suggests this isn't just a stash. It's been accessed, used, possibly replenished. There's a history to this money that everyone in the room understands, makes it even more dangerous. Dumars signs off on the count. Everything's documented. The money goes into evidence lockup, a secure vault with actual functioning cameras and biometric access requiring 2 authorized personnel simultaneously. It's locked away properly. The system worked. Everyone followed protocol, and then they all go to a bar. This transition is crucial to how the RIT functions. The bar scene isn't criminals plotting a heist. It's colleagues decompressing after major bust, which is what these people do after every major bust. They're not having a secret meeting. They're having beers. Carnahan shoots it with the loose, observational style of hanging with friends. Multiple conversations overlapping, people coming and going, rounds of drinks appearing without ceremony. But listen to what they're saying. Baptiste, still riding the high of finding the money, jokes about her student loans. 140k in debt for a degree, so I could make 52k a year. That room today had 4 years of my salary per cop in it. Someone else mentions childcare costs. Another brings up his mortgage being underwater after the latest housing market shift. These aren't abstractions. These are the specific financial pressures that accompany middle-class American life in 2026. None of them are starving. None of them are truly desperate. But all of them are stretched thin, working a dangerous job that undervalues their risk, watching criminals traffic in amounts of money that would permanently solve every problem in their lives. Dumars stays quiet through most of this, nursing a bourbon, watching his team. Damon plays him with the stillness of someone thinking very hard about something he doesn't want to be thinking about. Byrne sits beside him, equally quiet but for different reasons. Affleck's performance here is fascinating. Byrne's silence feels like decision, like he's already made a calculation and is waiting for the right moment to voice it. That moment comes when most of the team has left, when it's just the core group remaining. Byrne doesn't ask a question, he states a fact. Nobody saw us count that money. The table goes quiet. Not shocked quiet, thoughtful quiet, thoughtful quiet. Cameras work in the vault, Dumars says. Not disagreeing with the implication, just stating a fact in return. But they don't work in the counting room, Byrne continues. So the number we wrote down, that's the number that exists. Officially, someone, one of the secondary characters whose name we are still learning, adds, if that number was different, how would anyone know? There it is. The question spoken aloud. And once it's spoken, the wall's breached. Everyone's now part of a conversation about theft from evidence, about betraying their oaths, about becoming exactly what they arrested Vega for. Dumars should shut this down. He's the ranking officer. This is the moment leadership matters. Instead, he says, how different? That question is permission, not approval, not yet. But permission to continue the thought experiment, to explore the mechanics of how this could work rather than immediately rejecting it as impossible. Kyle Chandler's character, Detective Raymond Costa, we finally learn his name here, sketches the logistics. The money is already counted and logged, but it has to be recounted before trial as standard procedure. Court dates for seizures this size typically take months to schedule. The money sits in the vault untouched until then. If they needed to access it before the recount, they'd need 2 authorized personnel. And who's authorized? The team that seized it. So we go in, take what we take, recount comes up short, and what? Baptiste asks. She is playing devil's advocate, not signing on. Testing the logic for holes. We blame the cartel for miscounting. We blame arithmetic, Costa says. Human error during initial count happens. That's why there's a recount protocol. The rationalization is breathtaking in its simplicity. They wouldn't be stealing technically. They'd be correcting an error that conveniently benefits them. The fiction is paper thin, but it's a fiction the system itself provides through its own redundancy. Dumars stands up. Everyone tenses, expecting him to either commit or condemn. Instead he says, sleep on it. All of you, 48 hours. Then we talk again. But understand, talking again means we are doing this. So if anyone wants out, you're out now, no questions, no judgment. Nobody leaves. Which isn't the same as everyone staying. It's the absence of an exit. The collective failure to do the right thing when the right thing is still easy. Carnahan ends the scene on Dumars' face as he walks to his car. The Miami night is humid, neon lit, alive with ambient sound. And Damon's expression is devastating because it's not conflicted. He's already decided. Everything that comes next is just logistics. The 48 hours pass in montage. We see characters in their lives. Baptiste with her mother, who needs medical care. Baptiste is helping pay for. Costa with his kids, doing homework at a kitchen table, bills stacked beside them. Byrne visiting his sister, who's in recovery from addiction, living in a facility, Byrne's partially funding. These aren't justifications. Carnahan's too smart for that, but they are context. They are the weight of obligation that sits on people who do dangerous work for insufficient compensation. The film is showing you that these aren't sociopaths. They are people who've been told their whole lives that hard work and service matter, discovering that the system doesn't back that promise with material support. When they reconvene, not at a bar this time, but at Costa's house, private, deliberate, the conversation is different, operational. How much do they take? How do they split it? Who has access to move it? How do they avoid the money creating visible lifestyle changes that raise flags? They settle on 18 million. They leave 2.4 million, close enough to the original count that the error is plausible. Split 38 ways, that's roughly 40-74K per person. Life changing but not lottery level. Enough to solve problems, not enough to buy mansions. The plan is simple. Dumars and Byrne will access the vault together, required 2-person authorization. They'll remove the money over multiple visits to avoid a single large discrepancy on access logs. The cash will be stored temporarily in a safe location they've secured. And nobody touches their share for 6 months minimum. No large purchases, no debt payoffs, nothing that creates a traceable pattern. 6 months we sit on it, Dumars tells the room. We do our jobs. We don't change anything about our lives, and we don't talk about this again until the trial concludes and the case is closed. Agreed? 38 heads nod. And just like that, without violence, without dramatic score, without anyone even using the word steal, they've committed to armed robbery of evidence. The rip begins not with action, but with agreement. With good people convincing themselves they are still good people, just pragmatic ones. Carnahan's camera holds on their faces as they leave Costa's house one by one. Each actor given a moment to show what this decision weighs. Some look relieved, some look scared, some look righteous, like they've finally claimed what they're owed. Dumars and Byrne are the last to leave. They stand by their cars, that comfortable partner silence between them. Finally Byrne says, "We are really doing this. We are really doing this," Dumars confirms. No going back after, no going back. They shake hands. Not celebratory, ceremonial, sealing something that can't be unsealed. The opening act ends with them driving away in opposite directions. The Miami skyline glitters behind them, beautiful and indifferent. And somewhere in a vault downtown, $20 million sits in evidence lockup, about to become the spark that burns their entire lives down. Because here's what Carnahan knows that they don't yet. Taking the money is the easy part. Living with it, that's the heist's real cost. And that bill is coming due faster than any of them expect. The actual theft takes 7 minutes of screen time and feels like 7 hours. Dumars and Byrne arrive at the station on a Tuesday morning, regular shift, coffee in hand. Nothing unusual. That's the genius of it. They're not sneaking in under cover of darkness. They're walking to the front door like they do every workday, nodding at desk sergeants, making small talk about the heat, the mundane as camouflage. They access the evidence wing using their credentials. The card reader beeps green, first biometric scan, Dumars' thumbprint, second scan Byrne's. The vault door's lock mechanism, chunking open sounds obscenely loud in the empty corridor. Carnahan holds on that sound, lets it reverberate. Point of no return, given audio form. Inside the vault, rows of steel shelving units hold tagged evidence from hundreds of cases. Drugs, weapons, electronics, and in a secured cage within the vault, the Vega money. Additional lock, additional protocol. They're the only two people authorized to access it without supervisory presence. Here's where Damon and Affleck's chemistry shifts into something uncomfortable. The easy partnership we saw earlier, gone, replaced by hyper-awareness of each other's movements. Dumars unlocks the cage. Byrne pulls out duffel bags they brought officially for transporting evidence to the courthouse, a routine task that wouldn't raise questions. They begin transferring stacks of cash from evidence boxes to the duffels. Neither speaks. The silence is surgical. Every rustle of currency, every zipper sound amplified by their shared anxiety. They're not looking at each other. Can't afford to. Looking would mean confronting what they're doing, and confronting it might stop them. They take exactly what they planned. 6 million this first trip, 1/3 of the total they intend to steal. Spreading it across multiple visits reduces the risk of a single anomalous access log entry attracting attention. Dumars reseals the evidence boxes, ensuring the remaining money still looks substantial, still fills the containers in a way that wouldn't trigger suspicion from a casual inspection. The walk back out is worse than the entry. Every person they pass in the hallway is a potential witness. Every security camera, and these ones work, captures them carrying duffels of evidence. Except it's not evidence anymore. It's loot. They've crossed from law enforcement to criminal in the time it takes to fill 3 bags. They load the duffels into Byrne's personal vehicle, parked in the station lot. Not a police cruiser. Nothing official. The transfer happens in broad daylight, visible to anyone watching. Which is the point. Hiding in plain sight works because suspicious behavior is what attracts attention. Act like you belong, and people assume you do. The stash location is a storage unit on the outskirts of Miami. Byrne rented it months ago, paid in cash, using his real name because fake IDs create unnecessary complication. Nothing illegal about renting storage. The unit contains exactly what you'd expect: old furniture, boxes of personal items, the accumulated debris of a life. The money goes into a locked footlocker buried under everything else. Perfectly ordinary, perfectly invisible. 2 more trips over the next 10 days. Same protocol, same careful nonchalance. By the time they are done, 18 million has migrated from evidence lockup to that storage unit, and the official count in the vault is now 2.4 million. Still a substantial seizure, just not the substantial seizure they originally documented. And nobody notices. That's the sick poetry of it. The system's so overburdened, so reliant on trust between officers, that the theft succeeds primarily because checking up on it would imply distrust. And you don't distrust your fellow cops. That's the foundational rule. The blue wall protects everyone inside it, even when some of those people are the threat. But here's where Carnahan's script sharpens its knife. Stealing the money doesn't create the conflict. Living with having stolen it does. The fracture begins subtly. A team member, Detective Lara Simmons, played by Catalina Sandino Moreno, makes a comment during a routine patrol about maybe trading in her car. Nothing extravagant, just looking at used vehicles online. Byrne, overhearing this, pulls her aside later. What are you doing? Simmons looks genuinely confused. Looking at cars. We agreed. 6 months. No changes. It's been 3 weeks and I'm not buying anything. I'm looking. That's not illegal. It's stupid. That's what it is. The interaction's brief but revealing. The paranoia is already metastasizing. Byrne's policing behavior that doesn't violate their agreement because the agreement itself is insufficient to contain his anxiety. What if Simmons does buy a car? What if someone asks how she afforded it? What if the question chain leads back to everyone? Dumars observes this exchange from across the squad room. He doesn't intervene. Doesn't need to. The damage is self-inflicting. Tayana Taylor's Baptiste, meanwhile, is unraveling differently. She's the youngest on the team, the newest, and increasingly she's displaying the physical symptoms of severe stress. She's not sleeping. Co-workers notice the dark circles, the extra coffee consumption. During a routine call, she hesitates on a decision that should be instinctive, and her hesitation nearly gets a civilian hurt. Dumars pulls her aside after that call. They sit in his car, air conditioning blasting against Miami humidity, and he asks the question carefully. You okay? Fine. Numa, using her first name, dropping rank for a moment. Talk to me. And she does. I found that money. If I hadn't been sharp that day, if I hadn't noticed the floorboards, none of this happens. So every time something goes wrong now, every time there's an investigation or an audit or anything, I think they are going to trace it back to me. They're going to realize I'm the thread they pull. It's the survivor's guilt logic of corruption. She benefited from her own competence, and now that competence feels like culpability. Dumars doesn't have a good answer for this. What can he say? That her fear is irrational when it's entirely rational? That nobody's coming when they might be? Instead, he offers the only comfort available. We are in this together, all of us. Nobody's taking a fall alone. But the promise is hollow, and they both know it. When pressure comes, when investigations tighten, self-preservation overrides solidarity. Always has, always will. The first external pressure arrives via Steven Yeun's character, introduced here in a sequence that reframes everything we watched. Dumars is grabbing lunch at a Cuban place near the station, one of those Miami institutions with formica tables and incredible ropa vieja. He's alone, reading case files, when someone slides into the booth across from him uninvited. Yeun plays Marcus Torres, and the introduction is deliberately low-key. Torres isn't threatening, he's conversational, polite even. Orders a cafecito, asks Dumars about his meal, makes small talk about the neighborhood, and then, casually, as if discussing the weather, how much did you actually find in that subfloor at Vega's place? Dumars' face does extraordinary work here. Damon cycles through multiple reactions in seconds: confusion, calculation, fear, defensive aggression before landing on neutral caution. 20 million, it's in the reports. Right, the reports. Torres sips his coffee. Thing is, Mateo Vega, he's not the guy you think he is. He's not a mid-level distributor. He's mid-level intelligence. DEA asset. Has been for 18 months. The booth suddenly feels very small. Torres continues, voice never rising above friendly explanation. So, when your team raided his house, you weren't hitting a cartel operation. You were compromising a federal investigation. The money you seized, that's operational funds. Not drug money, agency money, marked bills, part of a sting we've been running on the Miami pipeline for 2 years. This is the pivot, the ground shifting under everything. If the money is federal, if it's marked, if there's a paper trail beyond what they manipulated, then the theft isn't just discoverable, it's inevitable. Every bill they took is evidence in a different case, logged in different databases, expected in different counts. Why are you telling me this? Dumars asks. Because 20 million isn't 20 million. Torres slides the phone across the table, shows Dumars a photo, evidence documentation from the DEA's side. The amount listed is 23.2 million. We already knew there was a discrepancy before you even logged your count. Which means either Vega skimmed possible, he's not a saint, or someone at Miami PD is creative with arithmetic. Dumars says nothing, giving Torres nothing. I'm not IA. Torres says, I'm not a cop at all, I'm cleanup. My job is making sure this federal investigation doesn't clatter because of local law enforcement complications. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly how much of that money is actually sitting in your evidence vault right now. And then we are going to figure out how to reconcile the counts without touching both our operations. It's not an accusation, it's an offer. Sort of. Torres is saying, I know you took it, I need to know how much, and maybe we can construct a fiction that protects everyone. But the fiction requires truth first. Confession as prerequisite to salvation. Dumars makes a choice. I need to talk to my people. You've got 48 hours, Torres says, standing. After that, the discrepancy gets escalated to people who won't be as pragmatic as me. He leaves cash for his coffee on the table and walks out. Dumars sits frozen. The lunch he ordered congealing in front of him. The case files he was reading now irrelevant. Everything just accelerated. The 6-month cushion they counted on? Gone. The assumption that nobody was tracking the money? Shattered. The emergency meeting happens that night. Not at anyone's house this time. Too risky, too traceable. They meet at a construction site, half-finished commercial building, no workers at night, no cameras. 38 cops standing in skeletal concrete structure under harsh work lights. Someone's rigged up. Dumars explains the Torres situation. Watches the group absorb the information with varying degrees of panic. Some want to return the money immediately. Some want to run. Some want to deny everything and dare Torres to prove it. Costa, the logistics guy, asks the crucial question. Can he prove it? Marked bills only matter if someone's checking serial numbers. Are we supposed to believe DEA documentation is infallible? Counts get disputed all the time. He knew there was a discrepancy before we even filed our count, Byrne points out. Which means they have records we don't control. Serial numbers, digital logs, something. Baptiste, voice tight. So what do we do? The group splinters into arguments. Everyone talks over everyone else. The unity from 3 weeks ago evaporates under pressure. Some blame Dumars for not vetting the bust better. Some blame the DEA for not coordinating. Some blame Vega for being a rat. Blame flows in every direction except the only one that matters. They chose to steal and theft has consequences. Dumars doesn't raise his voice. Doesn't need to. He just waits for the arguing to exhaust itself. Then says, we tell him nothing. We proceed as planned. Torres is bluffing, he has to be. If he had proof we took it, he'd come with warrants and arrests. He's fishing, hoping we'll panic and confess. We don't. And if he's not bluffing, Simmons asks, then we're already screwed and cooperating doesn't save us. It just gives them confession to use in prosecution. Dumars looks around the circle. We sit tight, we maintain the story. The original count was accurate. If DEA's count is different, that's on Vega or his suppliers, not our problem. It's a gamble, a huge one, and it requires everyone to hold together under pressure that's only going to increase. 38 people keeping the same story straight, not cracking, not making deals. Scott Adkins' character, Officer Marcus Reeves, the team's breach specialist, speaks up. He's been quiet until now, but when he talks, people listen. If anyone breaks, we all go down, so we need insurance. What kind of insurance? Byrne asks. The kind where if one of us talks, the others know immediately. And the kind where talking means taking everyone down, not just yourself. Reeves looks around. We document this, all of us, on record saying we participated. Not to threaten each other, to protect each other. Mad strategy. Nobody flips if flipping burns them as bad as it burns everyone else. It's sociopathic game theory applied to criminal conspiracy, and it works because it has to. One by one, using Reeves's phone, each of the 38 cops makes a brief statement on camera, their name, their role in the theft, their share amount. The footage is encrypted, backed up to multiple secure locations, with instructions to release it if any one of them cooperates with investigators. They've just gone from co-conspirators to mutually assured destruction participants. The trust that binds them now isn't loyalty, it's leverage. It's insurance through mutually ensured damnation. Carnahan shoots this sequence like a funeral. Each person stepping forward, stating their complicity, stepping back into shadows. The work lights create harsh contrast, light and dark, guilty and no, everyone's guilty. There's no counterweight anymore, just varying shades of culpable. Baptiste goes last. Her voice shakes. The statement comes out halting. Detective Numa Baptiste. Miami PD. I participated in taking $18 million from evidence. My share was $474,000. She looks directly at the camera. And I don't know how to live with that. Dumars stops the recording. That last part doesn't need to be on tape, but it's said. It's out there. The admission that what they're doing isn't just illegal. It's existentially corrosive. They're not just stealing money. They're stealing from themselves, from the people they believed they were. The meeting disperses. The construction site empties. And Dumars is left standing alone in the skeletal building, looking out over Miami's lights, wondering how a decision made in a bar 3 weeks ago has metastasized into this. A web of blackmail, paranoia, and federal attention closing in faster than any plan accounted for. His phone buzzes. Text from Torres. Clock's ticking. 46 hours remaining. The trust that held these 38 cops together through years of dangerous work has fractured into something else entirely. Something that looks like unity from the outside, but feels like a noose tightening from within. They're trapped now. Not by Torres. Not by the DEA. By each other. By the web they wove, thinking it would catch them if they fell, not realizing until too late that it's the thing pulling them down. And we're only getting started. Torres doesn't wait 48 hours. He shows up at the station the next morning, not to see Dumars, to introduce himself to Captain Velez. Walks right into her office, federal credentials in hand, and requests access to all documentation related to the Vega seizure. Court order attached. Nothing Velez can do except comply. Word spreads through the station like contagion. Torres is here. Torres is in the files. Torres is cross-referencing their evidence logs with federal databases. The 48-hour buffer was a fiction. He was always going to move faster. The grace period was bait, testing whether they'd panic, confess, or hold formation. They're holding. Barely. Dumars watches from the squad room as Torres sets up in a conference room with boxes of files, laptop open, methodically working through every document. The man's patience is terrifying. He's not rushing. Not interrogating people, just auditing, comparing numbers, running serial numbers on bills still in evidence, building a case through arithmetic rather than accusations. Byrne appears at Dumars' shoulder. We need to move the money. Move it where? Anywhere that isn't traceable to us. Storage units in my name. If he digs, he's already digging, Dumars interrupts. Moving it now looks like consciousness of guilt. We sit. Sitting gets us caught. Moving gets us caught faster. It's the prisoner's dilemma playing out in real time. Every defensive action creates evidence of wrongdoing. Every proactive move looks like flight. The only winning strategy is perfect stillness, which psychologically might be the hardest thing these action-oriented cops can do. Kyle Chandler's Costa approaches with new information. Torres requested access logs for the evidence vault. Specifically, he wants to know every time the Vega money was accessed, by whom, for what purpose. That's bad. The logs will show Dumars and Byrne made multiple entries during the period when the money should have been untouched. Legitimate reasons exist. Evidence maintenance, documentation review, but the pattern will raise questions. Why 3 separate visits? Why only those 2 officers? Why no supervisory oversight? Velez can block the request temporarily, cite ongoing cases or officer privacy, but it's a delaying tactic at best. Torres has court authority. He'll get what he wants eventually. The question is whether eventually gives them enough time to construct a cover story. Dumars makes a call. Not to anyone on the team. To a defense attorney named Sarah Cohn, someone he's testified against in court dozens of times but respects as sharp and ethical within her role. The conversation happens in his car, parked 3 blocks from the station. Precaution against wiretaps he's not sure exist but can't rule out. Hypothetically, Dumars says, if evidence counts don't match between local and federal databases, whose numbers take precedence? Cohn's silent for a moment. When she speaks, her voice is careful. Why are you asking me this, Dane? Hypothetically, both counts are documentation, not truth. If they conflict, investigators look for explanations. Human error in counting, skimming by suspects before seizure, procedural inconsistencies in how money was bundled and logged. She pauses. Or theft after seizure. That's the explanation that gets examined last because it requires cops being corrupt, which departments resist concluding. But once that explanation gets traction, it becomes a freight train. Hard to stop. How would someone stop it? Hypothetically. Depends on the evidence. If it's just conflicting numbers, you argue counting error. If there are marked bills missing, you argue chain of custody problems. Maybe the bills weren't where suspects claimed. If there's surveillance footage of officers accessing evidence without proper authorization, she doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. What if officers had proper authorization? Dumars asks. Then you're into motive territory. Why access evidence multiple times? Investigators would want explanations. And those explanations get tested against other evidence, financial records, behavioral changes, communications. It becomes an entire investigation, and those are hard to survive even if you're innocent. Dumars thanks her and hangs up, sits in the car watching tourists walk past, people visiting Miami for vacation, experiencing a version of the city that's colorful and exciting and completely divorced from the grimy reality he's drowning in. Their problems are sunburn and restaurant choices. His problems are federal conspiracy charges and 37 other people whose freedom depends on his next decision. Back at the station, Torres is conducting voluntary interviews. Voluntary in the sense that refusing looks suspicious, so everyone complies. He's working through the team alphabetically, spending 15 to 20 minutes with each officer, asking about the raid, the discovery, the counting procedure. When Baptiste's turn comes, she sits across from Torres in the conference room, trying to project calm. Tiana Taylor's performance here is a masterclass in barely contained terror. Baptiste's voice stays steady, but her hands betray her, fidgeting with her badge, scratching at cuticles, touching her face too frequently. Torres notices. Of course he notices. That's his job. Walk me through finding the money, Torres says. Tone conversational. Baptiste does. The details match her report exactly. She's practiced this, rehearsed it, can recite it without variation. The floorboards looked off. She checked. She called Dumars. They opened the subfloor panel together. And when you saw the amount, what did you think? The question's a trap. Any answer reveals something. If she says she was surprised by the quantity, why wasn't that surprise noted in reports? If she says it seemed consistent with their intelligence, why did federal counts come in higher? I thought we'd made a good bust, Baptiste says carefully. Big score, big case. Biggest of your career? So far, yes. Torres nods, writes something. The writing is psychological warfare. What's he noting? Is it important or just a tactic to create anxiety? Did you notice anything unusual during the counting process? Torres asks. Like what? Like the cameras being non-functional. Baptiste's pulse spikes, visible in her neck. I knew they were being repaired. Budget issue. It was mentioned during the count. By whom? She can't remember. It was someone, definitely someone, but who? The failure to recall looks suspicious, but naming someone incorrectly looks worse. One of the senior officers. I don't remember who specifically. Torres makes another note. Did the lack of camera coverage concern you? Should it have? I'm asking if it did. No, Baptiste says. We had multiple officers present. Chain of custody was maintained. The count was documented thoroughly. It's the right answer procedurally. But Torres's expression suggests he's heard right answers before from people who are lying. He thanks her for her time. She leaves feeling like she just failed a test she didn't know she was taking. The interviews continue through the day. Costa, Simmons, Reeves, each one a variation on the same theme, recounting the official story, staying consistent, revealing nothing. But consistency itself becomes suspicious when it's too perfect. Real witnesses have variations, contradictions, faulty memories. These officers sound rehearsed. And Torres is absolutely noticing. By late afternoon, he's ready for Dumars. They sit in Velez's office, neutral territory, official space. Torres opens a laptop, turns it so Dumars can see the screen. It's a spreadsheet comparing the Miami PD evidence count with DEA operational funds tracking. 2.2 million was logged into Vega's subfloor for the operation, Torres says. Your team logged 2.4 million seized. That's a 2.8 million discrepancy. Vega skimmed, Dumars says immediately, or miscounted when he received it. Or the bills were bundled wrong. Criminals aren't known for meticulous accounting. True, Torres agrees. Except we used marked bills, sequential serial numbers in specific ranges. I've checked what's currently in your evidence vault. The bills present are from the ranges we expected, but the quantities are wrong. Entire bundles are missing. The vice tightens. Marked bills mean Torres doesn't need to prove the money was taken. He just needs to prove it's gone. And then the burden shifts to Dumars to explain where it went. How many bills have you personally examined? Dumars asks, stalling. Enough to establish pattern. I don't need to count every bill when I can verify bundle integrity. Bundle integrity can be compromised before seizure, which is why I'm asking you to explain the access logs. Torres pulls up another document. You and Detective Byrne accessed the vault containing the Vega money 3 times in 10 days. Each visit lasted between 40 and 60 minutes. No supervisory presence. No documented reason for access. Why? Dumars has an answer ready. Has to. Evidence review for court preparation. We were building the case file. Needed to confirm quantities and denominations for testimony. Why multiple visits? The amount was substantial. We couldn't photograph and document everything in one session without it taking hours, which would tie up the vault room other officers needed. It's plausible, weak but plausible, the kind of explanation that works if nobody is looking hard. But Torres is looking very hard. Did you remove any currency from the vault during these visits? No. The lie sits between them like a physical object. Torres studies Dumars' face, looking for tells. Damon plays it with eerie stillness. No defensive posturing, no aggressive denials, just flat affect that could be confidence or could be suppression. Lieutenant, I'm going to be direct with you, Torres says. The numbers don't work. Your count doesn't match ours. Access patterns suggest unauthorized removal. And the financial profiles of several officers on your team show recent changes. Debt payments, spending patterns that coincide with the timeline of this seizure. It's a bluff. Has to be. They all agreed not to spend anything for 6 months, unless someone broke the agreement, unless someone got scared and tried to preemptively solve the problems the money was supposed to solve. If you're accusing my team of something, do it officially, Dumars says. File charges, present evidence, but stop fishing with implications. Torres closes the laptop. I'm not your enemy here. I'm trying to prevent a shitstorm that buries both our departments. If there's an explanation that reconciles these counts without criminal charges, I want to find it. But I need cooperation. You have my cooperation. You have everyone's cooperation. What you don't have is a crime, because nothing criminal occurred. It's a line in the sand. Torres nods slowly, standing. Okay, we'll do this the hard way then. Grand jury convenes in 3 weeks. Subpoenas will be issued. And Lieutenant, when federal investigators start turning over financial records, phone logs, surveillance footage from around the station, things get found. Things people forgot existed. Just keep that in mind. He leaves. Dumars sits alone in Velez's office, staring at the closed laptop like it might reopen and swallow him. Velez enters a moment later, closes the door behind her. Talk to me, Dane, she says quietly. Nothing to talk about. Bullshit. Lina Esco's performance shifts here into something harder, more direct. I've been a cop for 23 years. I know what federal heat looks like. I know what guilty cops look like. And right now, you look like both. Dumars meets her eyes. Are you asking me as my captain or as someone investigating me? I'm asking as someone who's gone to bat for this team repeatedly, who's defended your tactics, your decisions, your unit cohesion, and who deserves to know if I've been defending people who betrayed everything we stand for. The silence stretches. Velez deserves the truth, has earned it through years of competent, ethical leadership. But the truth destroys 38 lives, including hers, because if she knows and doesn't act, she becomes complicit. And if she acts, she destroys people she's commanded for years. The count we filed is accurate to our documentation, Dumars finally says. If federal numbers differ, that's a federal problem. We did our jobs correctly. It's not a confession. It's not a denial either. It's a plea for Velez to stop asking questions. She doesn't want answer. She holds his gaze for a long moment, then nods. Okay, make sure your team understands. Any financial irregularities, any deviations from protocol, any communication that could be construed as coordination. That's what federal investigators will weaponize. Tell them to be smart. I will. She opens the door. And Dane, whatever you did or didn't do, fix it before it breaks everyone. He's alone again. The station continues its routine operations around him. Arrests, paperwork, shift changes, normal police work by normal cops doing normal jobs. Except nothing's normal anymore. Every interaction feels surveilled. Every conversation could be a wire. Every financial transaction could be the thread investigators pull. His phone buzzes. Group text from Byrne to the core team. Someone spent money. Need to meet. Now. The foundation cracks wider. Someone broke protocol. Someone got scared or greedy or practical and decided 6 months was too long to wait. And now they've all got a target on them bigger than before. The construction site again. Midnight. Not all 38 this time, just the inner circle. Dumars, Byrne, Costa, Baptiste, Simmons, Reeves. The people who planned this, who executed it, who have the most to lose. Byrne doesn't waste time. Torres mentioned financial pattern changes, which means he's already looking at bank records, which means someone gave him a reason to look. Who spent? Nobody speaks. The accusation hangs there, waiting for someone to confess. When silence continues, Byrne's voice hardens. I'm not asking. I'm telling you, someone fucked up, and if we don't know who, we can't control the damage. Costa raises a hand. My daughter needed surgery, emergency appendectomy. Insurance covered most of it, but the deductible was $8,000. I paid it. Cash. 2 weeks ago. Jesus Christ, Byrne says. What was I supposed to do? Costa's defensive now. Let her suffer. Tell the hospital I'd pay in 4 months when it's safe. She's 9 years old. No one argues. What argument exists? The plan was always going to collide with real life eventually. Emergencies don't wait for conspiracy timelines to play out. But now, Taurus has a concrete example, a financial transaction that deviates from normal patterns traceable to a specific officer occurring post-seizure. Anyone else? Dumars asks. We need full inventory. Everything spent, gifted, moved. All of it. Simmons admits she paid off a credit card, 4,200. Not dramatic, but visible if anyone's looking. Reeves moved money into his mother's account for her assisted living facility, 6,000. Baptiste, shaking, confesses she made a student loan payment, 2,000. Not even her full share, just enough to keep from defaulting. These aren't extravagant purchases. No Porsches or Rolex watches. Just people trying to solve the problems that made them vulnerable to temptation in the first place. But each transaction is a data point, each one is evidence. Together, they form a pattern that federal forensic accountants will recognize instantly. So what do? Baptiste asks, voice small. Dumars doesn't have a good answer. The options are all bad. They can claim the money came from legal sources, loans, gifts, savings. But proving that requires documentation most people don't keep. They can return the money they spent, but that creates different suspicious transactions. They can refuse to explain, but silence becomes evidence when subpoenas land. Or, Byrne voices the unthinkable. We destroy the rest of it, all 18 million. Burn it. Tonight. Make the evidence disappear. That doesn't explain what we already spent, Costa points out. No, but it removes the physical proof. Without marked bills to compare, Taurus has database discrepancies and suspicious transactions. Circumstantial, not enough for charges. It's enough for investigation, Simmons says. And investigation leads to grand jury, leads to indictment, leads to trial. Even if we beat the charges, we are done. Career's over. Pension's gone. They're talking in circles. Every solution creates new problems. The heist was supposed to be clean, take the money, wait it out, emerge financially stable and unsuspected. Instead, it's a disaster accelerating toward catastrophe. Dumars makes the executive decision. We don't burn it. That's panic. And panic gets us caught. We stick to the original plan. The money stays hidden. We prepare for subpoenas. We get our stories airtight. And we weather whatever Torres throws at us. And if we can't weather it, Baptiste asks, then we make sure if one of us goes down, we all go down together. It's not inspiring. It's not heroic. It's just realistic acknowledgement that they're past the point of individual salvation. They disperse again. And as Dumars drives home through pre-dawn Miami, he thinks about Torres's words, the hard way. They chose it. Chose defending the indefensible over admitting guilt. And now they're committed to a course that either ends in complete victory or total destruction. No middle ground, no partial wins. The midpoint's passed. The external pressure Torres represents is just beginning, and internally, the team's cohesion is fracturing under stresses they never anticipated. The rip isn't just what they did to the evidence vault. It's what the theft is doing to them, ripping apart trust, ethics, identity, everything that held them together before $20 million made them forget who they were supposed to be. The subpoenas arrive on a Tuesday, thick manila envelopes hand-delivered by federal marshals to the station, to homes, to a cop having breakfast at a diner. 38 envelopes. 38 summons to appear before a grand jury investigating irregularities in evidence handling procedures related to case number 24. CR 8847. Legal language that means, we know you took it, now prove you didn't. Each subpoena demands financial records going back 2 years. Bank statements, credit card statements, loan documents, tax returns. Also phone records, text messages, emails. Also, any documentation related to the Vega seizure. It's a comprehensive dragnet designed to map every financial move and every communication between team members during the relevant time frame. Dumars reads his subpoena sitting in his car outside his apartment. The morning's already hot, humidity making the paper stick to his fingers. The language is clinical, but the message is clear. They're coming for everything. Privacy is over. Every transaction will be scrutinized. Every text passed for evidence. Every deviation from financial norms questioned under oath. His phone rings. Byrne, you get yours? Yeah, we're screwed. Not yet, we are not. Dane, they're going to see every dollar we moved, every payment we made. Every. I know what they're going to see. Dumars interrupts. Which is why we need lawyers. Real ones. Now, the problem with getting lawyers is that lawyers ask questions, and answering those questions honestly means confessing to crimes, which attorney-client privilege protects but doesn't erase. Lying to your lawyer means going to trial with someone who doesn't know the truth, which is suicide. The options are bad and worse. Dumars contacts Saracon again, this time not hypothetically. He needs representation, and he needs someone who won't judge, who'll fight regardless of guilt. Cohn's reputation is defending the indefensible with extraordinary competence. Perfect match. They meet at her office. Modern space, glass and chrome, the aesthetic of expensive legal expertise. Cohn sits across from Dumars with a legal pad and a recording device she makes a show of turning off. Before we start, she says, understand that what you tell me stays between us, but I can't help you if you lie. Half-truths get you convicted, so level with me completely, or we're wasting time. Dumars weighs this. Full confession means trusting someone outside the circle, but fighting federal charges without your lawyer knowing the truth is guaranteed failure. He tells her everything: the counting room, the access visits, the storage unit, the 18 million still sitting there, untouched except for the relatively small amounts people spent. He tells her about Torres, about the marked bills, about the mutual destruction insurance video they recorded. Cohn listens without expression, takes occasional notes. When Dumars finishes, she's quiet for a full minute. Okay, she finally says. First thing, you're probably going to prison. The bluntness is jarring. That's your assessment? That's reality. Federal conviction rate is 93%. You committed theft of government funds, criminal conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The evidence is substantial. Missing marked bills, access logs, financial transactions. Unless we can create reasonable doubt or negotiate a deal, trial means conviction. So we make a deal. With what leverage? You're not the kingpin here. You're all equally culpable. Nobody to flip on. The only thing you can offer is the money, but they'll get that anyway once they pressure someone to reveal the location. Cooperation without unique information doesn't buy much leniency. Dumars absorbs this. What's the play then? Unified defense. All 38 of you get representation that coordinates strategy. We argue systemic failures created ambiguity about the count. We challenge the DEA's documentation. We question chain of custody before your seizure. We make them prove theft rather than just show discrepancies. It's a long shot, but it's what we have. And the financial transactions? We explain them with legitimate sources. Costa's daughter's surgery? He took out a loan that happened to process the same week, not connected to the seizure. Baptiste loan payment, delayed paycheck from a side job. For every transaction, we create alternative explanations that aren't probably false. That's lying. Cohn doesn't blink. That's defense work. The prosecution has to prove their narrative beyond reasonable doubt. Our job is creating doubt. Whether that's through truth or alternative explanations is legally irrelevant. It's morally irrelevant too at this point. They're past the event horizon where ethics matter. Now it's just survival. Dumars leaves Cohn's office with instructions to have the entire team retain counsel, ideally through her firm, so strategies align. The cost will be astronomical. Federal defense doesn't come cheap, but using the stolen money to pay for defense of stealing, that money has a perverse logic. They're beyond questioning. Back at the station, work continues. Cases don't stop because officers are under investigation. Arrests still need making. Reports still need filing. The cognitive dissonance is surreal. Dumars interviews a burglary suspect about stolen property while he's under grand jury investigation for exactly that. Captain Velez calls a unit meeting. Everyone crams into a conference room, standing room only, tension thick enough to choke on. Velez stands at the front and her face shows the strain she's under. You've all received subpoenas, she starts. This is now a formal federal investigation, which means some rules apply going forward. First, you don't talk to federal investigators without counsel present. Ever. I don't care if they corner you in the bathroom and say, it's just a friendly chat. Lawyer. Every time. Second, you don't discuss the case among yourselves on any department system. No emails, no desk phones, no station conversations. Assume everything's monitored. Third, you come to me immediately if anyone approaches you about cooperation deals. Don't make decisions alone. Someone asks, are we suspended? Not yet. You remain on active duty pending investigation outcome. But understand, if charges are filed, that changes instantly. Do you believe we did this? The question comes from Baptiste, voice stronger than her expression suggests. Velez pauses. The room holds its breath. Her answer matters more than procedural guidance. It's about whether their leader still sees them as cops or criminals. I believe, Velez says carefully, that you are innocent until proven guilty and that everyone deserves a vigorous defense. What I believe personally is irrelevant to how I'll support you professionally. It's a politician's answer, neither condemnation nor absolution. and it tells everyone exactly what they need to know. Velez suspects, but won't act on suspicion. She'll wait for proof. Whether that's loyalty or cowardice depends on perspective. The meeting disperses. Dumars catches Velez on her way out. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she says quietly. "If this goes sideways, I'm not falling on a sword for anyone. I've got my own career, my own conscience. I'll support legitimate defense, but I won't obstruct justice." Clear, clear. She leaves. And Dumas understands the isolation now. They're truly on their own. No institutional support when institutions realize their members are predators. The paranoia accelerates from that point. Officers start noticing things, cars that seem to follow them, people watching from across streets, strangers asking neighbors questions. Some of it's real. Federal surveillance is standard in conspiracy investigations. But some of it's imagined, the psychological projection of guilt onto ordinary coincidence. Simmons becomes convinced her phone's tapped. She is not wrong. Warrants for wiretaps are likely approved, given the evidence Torres has. But her response is excessive. She buys burner phones, changes them weekly, communicates through encrypted apps with protocols that would impress intelligence operatives. The operational security is smart. The fact that she needs it means everything's already broken. Reeves goes the opposite direction. He becomes reckless, almost daring investigators to find something, pays for drinks in cash with large bills, makes jokes about evidence handling during arrests. It's self-destructive behavior masquerading as confidence. Dumars pulls him aside after one particularly egregious display. "What are you doing?" "Living my life." "I'm not going to cover because feds are watching." "You're creating evidence, acting guilty." "I am guilty," Reeves says flatly. "So are you. So are all of us." Pretending otherwise doesn't change reality. He's not wrong, but he's not helpful either. His defiance puts everyone at risk by drawing attention, by giving investigators behavioral examples that suggest consciousness of guilt. Costa, meanwhile, withdraws completely, stops socializing with the team, eats lunch alone, doesn't attend the usual post-shift gatherings. He's isolating defensively, trying to minimize his exposure to group dynamics that could be documented as conspiracy evidence. Smart tactically, devastating socially. The unit that functioned as a family is fragmenting into frightened individuals. Baptiste's stress manifests physically. She loses weight, develops a tremor in her hands noticeable enough that range instructors flag her. During a wellness check, she admits to not sleeping more than 3 hours a night. The department psychologist offers medication. Baptiste refuses. Can't afford to have prescription records that suggest psychological distress during the period under investigation. Byrne becomes obsessed with Torres, starts tracking his movements, learning his patterns, researching his background. It's not useful intelligence gathering, it's fixation. Dumars finds him one night sitting in a car across from Torres's hotel, just watching. "This doesn't help anything," Dumars says, sliding into the passenger seat. "Knowing your enemy helps." "He's not the enemy. He's doing his job. We created this situation." Byrne turns to him, and Affleck's performance here is quietly devastating. This man who was rock-solid competent weeks ago is fraying visibly. "I keep thinking about what you said, about fixing it before it breaks everyone. How do we fix this, Dane? Tell me how." Dumars doesn't have an answer. The honest truth is, you don't fix this. You endure it. You survive if you're lucky. You don't fix consequences you've earned. The grand jury testimony begins 2 weeks later. Officers are called alphabetically. Each appearance is private. Grand jury proceedings are secret, but everyone compares notes afterward despite Velez's warnings. The questions follow predictable patterns. Describe the raid. Describe the counting process. Describe your financial situation. Describe any communications with team members about the money. The dangerous questions are the ones about knowledge. Did you know the cameras weren't functioning? If you say no, you're lying. Everyone knew. If you say yes, you are admitting awareness of a vulnerability that could enable theft. Did you discuss the money amount with colleagues? Yes is conspiracy. No is probably false given text records and surveillance. The legal strategy Cohn designed is simple. Answer what's asked. Volunteer nothing. Claim uncertainty wherever plausible. "I don't recall" becomes the most common phrase. Overused, it suggests coordination. Used precisely, it's protection against perjury when memories genuinely blur under stress. Baptiste testifies on a Wednesday. She's prepared extensively with Cohn, practiced every question variant, knows where the traps are. But sitting in the grand jury room facing federal prosecutors and 23 citizens evaluating her credibility, the preparation evaporates. They ask about finding the money. She recounts it exactly as written in reports. They ask about the counting process. She describes procedures accurately. Then they ask, did it strike you as unusual that cameras weren't operational? Baptiste hesitates. That pause is fatal. It was mentioned as a temporary issue. But did it concern you? Should it have? That's not what I asked, detective. Did the lack of surveillance concern you personally when counting $20 million? She's trapped. Admitting concern suggests she anticipated the vulnerability being exploited. Denying concern suggests negligence or dishonesty. She settles on. Multiple officers were present. Chain of custody was maintained through personnel instead of cameras. It's an adequate answer. Not great. The prosecutor moves on, but Baptiste knows she stumbled. That hesitation, that defensive explanation, it's on record now. And if enough officers show similar patterns, the cumulative effect becomes damning. Dumars testifies the following week. He's calmer, more experienced with interrogation dynamics. When they ask about camera functionality, he responds, I was aware they were scheduled for maintenance. Not unusual in departments with budget constraints. Did you see that as an opportunity? An opportunity for what? To misrepresent the count? No. The count was accurate to our documentation. If federal counts differ, that's a question for whoever provided the intelligence on the money's origin. It's a subtle attack, implying the DEA's count might be wrong. Aggressive defense rather than passive justification. The prosecutors note his deflection but can't directly challenge without revealing their evidence strategy. After hours of questions, Dumars is excused. Walking out of the federal building into Miami sunlight feels like surfacing from deep water. He maintained composure, didn't perjure himself on anything probable, but he also didn't clear himself. No one does. Grand juries don't exonerate, they just gather evidence toward indictment. 3 weeks into the grand jury process, Torres requests a meeting. Not at the station this time, a coffee shop in Coral Gables, public and neutral. Dumars brings Cohn. They sit across from Torres like opposing negotiators, which is exactly what they are. The grand jury will return indictments, Torres says without preamble. That's not speculation, it's certainty. The question is scale. Do I push for individual charges against all 38? Or do I target leadership and offer deals to subordinates? Deals require something to trade, Cohn points out. What are you looking for? The money, location, intact, and cooperation identifying who planned this versus who just went along. That's asking officers to inform on each other. That's asking criminals to accept responsibility proportionate to their culpability. Dumars speaks for the first time. We are not criminals. Torres actually laughs. It's not cruel, just genuinely amused. Lieutenant, you stole $18 million from a federal operation. You are absolutely criminals. The only question is whether you are smart criminals who minimize damage or stupid ones who fight until everyone's destroyed. Fighting is our right. It is. And you lose. But sure, exercise that right. See where it gets you. Torres stands. Offer expires in 72 hours. After that, I prosecute everyone to the fullest extent. No deals. No leniency. Everyone gets the maximum exposure. He leaves. Cohn and Dumars sit in silence for a moment. He's bluffing, Dumars finally says. Maybe. Or maybe he has enough evidence that he doesn't need cooperation. Grand jury indictments can be secured without flipped witnesses if the paper trail is solid enough. So what do? Cohn closes her briefcase. We prepare for war, and we hope some of your people are better liars than others. That night, Dumars convenes the group one final time. Not the construction site, too exposed now. A private warehouse owned by Costa's brother-in-law, swept for surveillance devices, phones left in cars outside. 38 faces look at him expecting answers. He's got none. Just choices, all bad. Torres is offering deals. Leadership takes the fall, subordinates get lighter sentences. He wants the money and cooperation. Immediate uproar. People talking over each other. Who decides whose leadership? Who decides who cooperates? The unified front that seemed solid weeks ago is paper thin now, tearing under pressure. Byrne shouts over the noise. We agreed, nobody flips, we have insurance. Insurance doesn't matter if we are all convicted anyway, someone yells back. Then what was the point? Why create the videos if we are just going to fold? Dumars lets them argue. Sometimes groups need to exhaust themselves before they listen. When the shouting subsides into bitter silence, he speaks. Nobody's folding, nobody's cooperating. We fight as planned. But understand what that means. It means trial. It means conviction is likely. It means prison time for most of us. And it means we trust each other completely despite every reason not to. Why should we trust anyone? Simmons asks. Half the people in this room would trade the rest for a deal in a heartbeat. She's voicing what everyone's thinking. The mutual assured destruction strategy only works if everyone believes everyone else won't defect. But Prisoner's Dilemma proves defection is rational when trust erodes. And trust has been eroding steadily. Because, Dumars says, we are all we have, the system's against us. Federal prosecutors have unlimited resources. If we fracture, they pick us apart one by one. Our only chance is staying unified. It's a hell of a thing to ask. Unity among thieves. Honor among people who've demonstrated they have none. But what other option exists? The group disperses without resolution. No consensus, no confidence. Just 38 people tied together by crime and consequence, hoping the rope holds even as everyone feels it flaying. Dumars drives home knowing sleep won't come. The paranoia isn't paranoid when people actually are coming for you. The stress isn't irrational when you're genuinely facing life in prison. The fear isn't weakness when you've bet everything on a plan that's collapsing. 72 hours until Torres's deadline. 72 hours to hold together what's already shattered. 72 hours before everything they tried to protect themselves from becomes inevitable. The rip isn't healing, it's spreading, and everyone caught in it is going down. The deadline passes without anyone taking the deal. Torres doesn't seem surprised. When he returns to the station the following Monday, his expression suggests he expected this outcome. Expected them to choose collective destruction over individual survival. Maybe he's seen it before, groups of cops who believe loyalty will protect them until handcuffs prove otherwise. He brings company this time. FBI agents, IRS investigators, a forensic accountant whose entire job is tracking money through digital labyrinths. They set up in multiple conference rooms, spreading the investigation across the building like an occupying force. The message is clear, the gloves are off. Within hours, they execute search warrants. Not at the station, at homes. Dumars is on patrol when he gets the call. Federal agents are at his apartment right now, boxing up financial documents, seizing computers, photographing every room. It's happening simultaneously across Miami. 38 residences raided in coordinated action. By the time Dumars arrives at his apartment, they're finishing. Agents in FBI windbreakers carry boxes labeled with evidence tags to trucks parked on the street. Neighbors watch from windows and doorways. The humiliation is intentional. Public raids send messages to suspects, to communities, to anyone watching that cooperation would have avoided this. The lead agent hands Dumars a receipt for seized items. It's 3 pages long. They've taken everything. Computers, phones, tablets, documents going back 5 years. Also his service weapon, badge and credentials. He's suspended pending investigation outcome. You have the right to be present during the search, the agent says. But we're finished. Dumars walks through his apartment after they leave. It's violated space now. Drawers opened and not quite closed correctly. Closets disturbed. The medicine cabinet rifled through. They didn't trash the place. No need for theatrical destruction. But the intrusion is total. Privacy is a fiction they've shredded. His phone rings. It's a number he doesn't recognize. He almost doesn't answer, but curiosity wins. Lieutenant Dumars? Unfamiliar voice. Male. Nervous. My name is Mateo Vega. I think we need to talk. The line goes silent except for Dumars's breathing. Vega. The target. The DEA asset. The man whose subfloor started this entire catastrophe. How did you get this number? I'm resourceful. Also desperate. Can we meet? Every instinct says no. Meeting with Vega violates so many rules, it's almost funny. Except nothing's funny anymore. Why would I do that? Because you're screwed, Vega says bluntly, and I might be the only person who can help. 20 minutes later, Dumars sits across from Vega in a park near the Miami River. Public space, witnesses everywhere, nothing covert about it. Vega looks different than his arrest photos. Thinner, more worn. Being a federal asset clearly takes its toll. You know they're coming for you, Vega says. All of you. Torres has built a case that's airtight. Why do you care? Because that money you took, it wasn't just DEA operational funds. Some of it was mine, real money I earned before I flipped. And some of it belongs to people who don't forgive debt. People who think I still have it, who are coming for me because federal protection doesn't mean shit when cartels want their money back. Dumars processes this. So you want us to return your portion? I want you to understand that your problem isn't just federal charges. The people whose money you stole, they know it's missing. They know cops took it, and they're going to want it back, with interest. Violently. It's a dimension Dumars hadn't fully considered. They've been so focused on legal consequences that physical consequences felt distant. But Vega's right carters don't sue. They collect, and 38 cops just became collection targets. How much time do we have? Vega shakes his head. I don't know. But people are asking questions. People are watching your team, and when they figure out where the money is, they won't ask nicely. Is this a threat? It's information. What you do with it is up to you. Vega stands. But if I were you, I'd return that money before you're dealing with sicarios and federal prosecutors simultaneously. He walks away, leaving Dumars on a park bench watching river traffic pass. The situation just went from catastrophic to apocalyptic. Not only are they facing indictment, but now there's cartel attention. The pressure is coming from every direction simultaneously. Dumars calls an emergency meeting. They gather at the warehouse again, but the energy is different now. No one's arguing strategy anymore. They're just scared. The raids broke something fundamental, the illusion they could control this situation. Vega says, the cartels know, Dumars tells them. They're looking for the money, for us. How would they know? Costa asks. Because $19 million doesn't just vanish without people noticing. Because Vega was their asset before he was federal. Because we've been under surveillance and cartels have better intelligence networks than we assumed. Baptiste's voice is small. What do? We have 3 options, Dumars says. Return the money and face charges without it as evidence. Keep it and face charges plus cartel retaliation. Or run. Run where? Simmons asks. Federal warrants are nationwide. We're cops. We know how fugitive apprehension works. There's nowhere to go. We could return it, Costa suggests. Anonymous tip about the storage location. Distance ourselves. Anonymous tips from suspects under federal investigation aren't anonymous. Cohn's voice comes from the doorway. She's here uninvited, which means something's changed. And I came to tell you, indictments are coming this week. Grand jury voted to indict all 38 of you on conspiracy charges, theft of government property, and obstruction. Arrest warrants will be executed simultaneously. The room goes silent. It's one thing to expect indictment, another to have it confirmed. The abstract becomes concrete. Fantasy of acquittal dies against the reality of formal charges. When? Byrne asks. 72 hours, maybe less. Torres wants to move before anyone runs or destroys evidence. The money is evidence, Reeves says. If we destroy it now, we eliminate their proof of what we took. They have the access logs, Cohn counters. They have the financial transactions. They have testimony from the grand jury. The money is just confirmation, not foundation. Destroying it doesn't save you. Then what does? Cohn looks around the room at 38 faces showing varying stages of despair. Honestly, nothing. You committed federal crimes. The evidence is substantial. The best outcome now is plea bargains that minimize sentences. Maybe some of you get probation. Most get reduced time. But someone's going to prison. Multiple someones. Who decides who? Someone asked from the back. You do. Collectively or individually. But understand, whoever cooperates first gets the best deal. Second person gets less. Third person gets nothing. It's a race to the prosecutor's office. It's the prisoner's dilemma weaponized. Cohn's not advising cooperation exactly, but she's making clear the game theory. First to defect wins, which means trust is now actively dangerous. Dumars sees it happening in real time. People looking at each other with new calculation. Who'll break first? Who's desperate enough to trade everyone else for a lighter sentence? The mutual destruction insurance doesn't matter if someone decides destruction is preferable to the alternative. We hold, Dumars says firmly. Nobody cooperates. We face this together. Easy for you to say, someone mutters. Your leadership. You're going down hardest anyway, which means I have the most to lose by holding. And I'm still saying, we hold. Byrne stands beside him. Unified front. We all agreed. We're all guilty. Nobody is more culpable than anyone else. We split responsibility equally. But the arguments lost force. Fear trumps solidarity. Survival instinct overrides loyalty. Dumars can see people's resolve crumbling. Not dramatically, quietly. The subtle shift of people mentally preparing to save themselves. The meeting dissolves without consensus. People leave in small groups, no longer certain who they can trust. The warehouse empties until it's just Dumars, Byrne, and Cohn. It's over, Byrne says quietly. Not yet. Dane, look at reality. We're getting arrested in 3 days. Someone will flip before then. Probably multiple someones. The dominoes are falling. So what's your solution? Byrne doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is different. Resolved. The storage unit. We empty it tonight. Distribute the money. Everyone takes their share. At least we walk away with something before it all comes crashing down. That violates every strategic decision we made. Those decisions were made when we thought we could win. We can't, so we salvage what we can. It's surrender logic, and it's dangerously appealing. If they're going to prison anyway, why not at least benefit first? Why face consequences for a crime while the spoils sit unused in storage? No, Dumars says. We leave it where it is. Evidence or not, taking it now is consciousness of guilt we don't need. Everything we've done is consciousness of guilt, then let's not add to it in the final hours. Byrne stares at him, and Affleck's performance here is layered with resentment and exhaustion. You know what your problem is? You still think being righteous now erases what we did then. It doesn't. We are thieves. We are corrupt cops. Pretending otherwise doesn't make us noble. I'm not pretending anything. I know what we are. But we are not animals. We don't have to make it worse. It can't get worse. Famous last words. Because 3 hours later, it gets worse. The storage facility is burning. Dumars gets the alert from a news notification on his phone. Major fire at a commercial storage facility on the 826. Multiple units involved. Cause under investigation. He knows before checking which facility. Knows before driving there. Knows with absolute certainty that $18 million is currently going up in smoke. By the time he arrives, fire trucks are everywhere. The building's half collapsed, flames visible through the roof. Investigators won't be able to determine what was in which unit for days, maybe weeks. Everything's ash and twisted metal. Byrne appears beside him. Did you? No. Did you? No. They watch it burn. And here's the terrifying question, if neither of them did it, who did? One of the team eliminating evidence? The cartel destroying what they couldn't take? Federal agents creating a situation where the money's destruction removes defense arguments about innocent explanation? Or maybe just an accident? Regular fire at a regular storage facility that happens to incinerate the evidence in the biggest case of their lives. Coincidence that feels like dark comedy. Dumas' phone rings. Torres. You watching the fire? Yeah, convenient timing. Almost like someone decided destroying evidence was preferable to it being found. We didn't do this. I believe you. But a jury won't. This looks like desperate criminals destroying evidence. Which means when we arrest you tomorrow. Yes, timeline moved up. You'll be facing additional charges for obstruction and evidence tampering. Tomorrow? Did you think I'd wait 72 hours after telling your lawyer my timeline? Warrants are being signed now. Arrest teams mobilize at dawn. I suggest you sleep well. It's the last comfortable night you'll have for a while. Torres hangs up. Dumars and Byrne stand watching $18 million burn. All that risk, all that betrayal, all that moral compromise for nothing. The money is gone. The evidence is gone. But the consequences remain. We should run, Byrne says. Where? Anywhere. Mexico, Canada. Disappear before dawn. And prove everything they're accusing us of. Become fugitives. Spend our lives running. Better than prison. Maybe. Probably not. Running guarantees the worst outcome. Manhunt, eventual capture, maximum sentences for flight risk. But staying means walking voluntarily into handcuffs, into the justice system they've corrupted, into cells they've put others in. Dumars thinks about his career. 20 years of service. Commendations. Lives saved. Criminals caught. All of it about to be erased by one decision. One moment of greed or weakness or pragmatic survival instinct depending on how you frame it. I'm not running, he says finally. I did this. I face it. Byrne nods slowly. Okay. Then I guess I'll see you in court. They separate. No handshake this time. No ceremonial sealing of decisions. Just two men walking to their cars, watching smoke rise into Miami's night sky, knowing sunrise brings the end. Dumars drives home. His apartment still feels violated from the search. He sits in his living room with lights off, watching through windows for the arrest team he knows is coming. At 5:47 a.m., they arrive. Quiet knock on the door. Professional. No battering ram necessary. Dumars opens it already dressed. Hands visible. Compliance signaled through posture. Lieutenant Dane Dumars. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft of government property, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. The Miranda rights he's read thousands of times sound different when they're for him. The handcuffs feel different on his wrists. The walk past neighbors, different neighbors than yesterday. but they're staring the same way, carries different weight. They put him in an unmarked car, drive him to Federal Building downtown. And throughout Miami, simultaneously, 37 other arrest teams are doing the same thing to 37 other cops who thought they could get away with it. The rip is complete, not the theft. That was just the opening move. The real rip is what comes now. The tearing apart of lives, careers, identities. The separation of who they thought they were from who they actually became. Dumars sits in federal holding watching morning light through high windows. In a few hours he'll be arraigned. Bail will be set, probably denied given flight risk. He'll be processed into the system he's fed people into for 2 decades. And somewhere in the Miami River, smoke from a storage facility fire still drifts on the wind, carrying the ashes of $18 million and 38 destroyed lives. Now let's talk about how Carnahan and cinematographer Shelley Johnson, who previously shot Captain America, The First Avenger and Jurassic Park 3, construct the visual language that makes the rip feel like it's suffocating you. Because that's the key word here, suffocation. This film visually compresses space and possibility as the story progresses. The opening scenes feel expansive, shot with wider lenses and deeper focus that lets you see Miami in all its sun-drenched complexity. By the final act, the cameras closing in, telephoto lenses flattening depth, focus pulling tight on faces while backgrounds blur into abstraction. The world literally shrinks around these characters as their options evaporate. Start with that opening sequence. Dumars wrapping his hands in the locker room. Johnson shoots it with a 50mm lens, roughly human eye perspective, middle distance that feels intimate without being claustrophobic. The fluorescent lighting is practical, actually flickering in a few fixtures because underfunded police stations have underfunded maintenance. Nothing's color graded to look cinematic. It's institutional beige and washed out blue, the palette of every government building you've suffered through. This aesthetic choice is deliberate anti-glamour. Carnahan wants you to see these cops as working-class civil servants, not Hollywood action heroes. The lighting doesn't flatter. The spaces aren't architecturally interesting. It's just work. Just people preparing for a dangerous job in surroundings that reflect how little the system values them. Watch how the camera moves during the raid sequence. It's handheld but controlled, not the chaotic shake of found footage, more the slight drift of a human operator following action. When Dumars' team breaches the door, the camera enters with them, positioned behind the shield man, experiencing the entry from participant perspective rather than omniscient observer. You clear rooms with them. The camera pans to check corners when operators check corners. It's embedded journalism style, documentary realism applied to narrative fiction. The Vega house interior is shot entirely with available light plus practicals, lamps that exist in the space, sunlight through windows, nothing added that wouldn't naturally be there. This creates pockets of shadow that feel threatening. You can't see everything, neither can the cops. The visual uncertainty mirrors tactical uncertainty. When Baptiste finds the subfloor panel, Johnson goes handheld close-up, camera pushing in on her face as she processes the discovery, then tilting down to reveal the money. The movement mimics human attention shifting. You look at her reaction before looking at what caused it. The money itself is shot with interesting reverence. When the camera reveals those stacks of cash filling the subfloor space, Johnson holds the shot, doesn't cut away. Lets you stare at it the same way the characters do. The bills are lit to catch their texture. You can see the fiber weave, the printing detail. It's not abstract wealth. It's physical currency that has weight and presence. The tangibility matters. This isn't numbers in an account. It's actual stacks you could hold, count, spend. The temptation is visual as much as conceptual. Color palette shifts happen gradually across the film. Early scenes in the locker room and at the Vega house trend, cool blues and grays suggesting professionalism, procedural correctness. The bar scene, where they first discuss stealing, introduces warmer tones. Amber lighting from hanging fixtures, the golden glow of beer in glasses, skin tones that read as flushed and alive. It's subtle, but the warmth signals the human element entering the equation. They're not cops in this scene. They're people with needs and wants and rationalizations. The counting room is lit almost entirely by overhead fluorescence, creating a flat, shadowless environment. This seems like aesthetic boredom, but it's functionally brilliant. In spaces without shadows, you can't hide anything. The lack of visual drama reinforces the accountability they are circumventing. That flat lighting should make theft impossible. The camera holds wide for most of the count, showing the full room, all the officers, the money on tables. Establishing geography, making clear how many witnesses exist to what's happening. When Dumars and Byrne make their first trip to the vault to steal the money, the cinematography becomes uncomfortably static. The camera is on a tripod, locked off, no movement. Just a wide shot of them entering, a medium shot of them filling duffels, a close-up of Dumars's hands transferring cash. The stillness is agonizing. Movement creates energy, dynamism. Stillness creates emphasis. Every rustle of currency amplifies, every breath audible. The locked-off camera functions like surveillance footage, and the irony is thick. The only camera watching is the one filming the movie itself. Notice how Johnson frames the two shots of Dumars and Byrne throughout the film. Early on, they are balanced in frame equal space, equal lighting, composed symmetry suggesting partnership. As tensions rise, the framing becomes unbalanced. One character pushed to frame edge, the other given more space. Lighting differentials were once in full light, the other partially shadowed. Visual language communicating the power dynamics and trust erosion before dialogue makes it explicit. The Torres introduction at the Cuban restaurant uses shallow depth of field to isolate Dumars and Torres from their surroundings. The background diners blur into bokeh, effectively removing the public space's context. It creates the sensation of private conversation in public setting. They are surrounded by people who can't help them, can't hear them, might as well not exist. The focus pulls between their faces during shot reverse, shot, and Johnson keeps the out-of-focus face visible in foreground, a blurred presence reminding you both people are constantly in frame even when we are focused on one. Surveillance logic encoded in the shot construction. The construction site meeting uses motivated lighting exclusively. What lights the characters themselves have rigged up. This creates extremely high contrast, bright pools of light with deep shadows beyond. Characters step in and out of illumination as they speak. When Baptiste makes her statement for the mutual destruction insurance video, she is lit harshly from above, shadows under her eyes and nose creating skull-like hollows. She looks already dead, already a ghost of who she was. Johnson employs long lenses increasingly as the film progresses. This has specific psychological effect. Telephoto compression makes backgrounds loom closer, creates sensation of walls closing in. When Dumars walks through the station after Torres's investigation begins, a 2000mm lens flattens the hallway, making it seem impossibly long, but also impossibly narrow. He is boxed in by focal length itself. Compare this to the early scene of him walking that same hallway shot with a wider lens. The space felt navigable then. Now it's a gauntlet. The fire at the storage facility is shot documentarily. Johnson apparently used actual news helicopter footage mixed with ground-level coverage that mimics broadcast journalism style. The handheld work is less stable here, the framing less composed, the lighting purely practical from emergency vehicles and flames. It doesn't feel like a movie scene. It feels like disaster footage. The aesthetic shift emphasizes that events have spiraled beyond narrative control into chaos. Carnahan uses reflections throughout the film with increasing frequency. Dumars seen in rear-view mirrors, in windows, in the polished surface of the interrogation table during his grand jury testimony. The doubling suggests fractured identity, the man and his reflection no longer matching. Who he is versus who he's become. The reflections are often slightly out of focus while the real, Dumars, is sharp or vice versa, creating visual ambiguity about which version is authentic. The arrest sequence at dawn uses exclusively natural light, that blue hour before sunrise when everything's soft and shadowless. Johnson shoots it almost entirely in wide shots, no dramatic close-ups of Dumars' face, no handheld intensity, just still, quiet documentation of a man being arrested. The distance is devastating. After spending 2 hours intimately close to these characters, the camera suddenly won't approach. It's like the film itself can't look directly at what's happening. Interior scenes in Federal Holding are lit with practicals that cast hard shadows through cell bars. These aren't symbolic jail bar shadows. They are actual shadows from actual bars, but the effect is still visual imprisonment made literal. Dumars sits in light striped with darkness, geometrically contained by illumination patterns. Carnahan and Johnson made a crucial decision to avoid stylization during the film's most intense moments. The temptation in crime thrillers is to make everything operatic, exaggerated angles, oversaturated colors, visual histrionics. The Rip refuses. When Baptiste has her breakdown, when Costa admits spending money, when the team fractures, these scenes are shot simply, medium shots, eye-level camera, neutral angles. The drama comes from performance and situation, not cinematographic flourish. This restraint makes the few stylized moments land harder because they are unexpected. The film's visual rhythm alternates between static observation and handheld immediacy, scenes of planning, of conversation, of characters alone with their thoughts. These are composed, still, locked off. Scenes of action, of confrontation, of systems failing. These go handheld. The camera's stability or instability becomes a visual cue for control or its absence. When Dumas and Torres meet at the park, the cameras on sticks lock down. Both men are in control of themselves. When the fire breaks out, handheld chaos. No one's controlling anything. One technical detail worth noting, Johnson shoots the money itself differently than anything else in the film. Currency gets macro lens treatment, extreme close-ups, showing paper texture, printing details, serial numbers. These inserts appear throughout, brief flashes of the money's physical reality. It's not just prop cash, it's the actual object of desire, fetishized through cinematography, made hyper-real through shallow focus and detailed capture. You see money the way the characters see it, as something almost too real, too tangible, too present to ignore. The color grading evolves subtly. Early scenes preserve skin tone warmth and natural color balance. As characters descend into paranoia and guilt, skin tones start pulling green sickly, stressed. It's extremely subtle, not enough to look overtly stylized, but enough to register subliminally as unhealth. By the final act, everyone looks slightly ill, slightly off. The color timing itself becomes evidence of corruption's physical toll. Carnahan uses negative space with increasing aggression. In early scenes, frames are balanced, characters centered or composed according to classical rules. Later scenes strand characters in corners of frame, leaving vast empty space that feels oppressive rather than liberating. A shot of Dumas alone in his apartment after the search. He is small in the lower left corner, the rest of frame showing empty room. The void dominates. He is visually overwhelmed by absence. The film's final images return to simplicity. Dumars in federal holding, waiting for arraignment, shot through the bars, but not composed to emphasize them. Just a man sitting. The camera holds. No movement, no cutting. Just observation of someone experiencing the consequence of choices. Johnson lets the shot run longer than comfortable. You start to feel the duration, the waiting, the temporal punishment of legal processes. The Rip isn't visually flashy. That's its strength. The cinematography serves story and character rather than calling attention to itself. But the craft is immaculate. Every lens choice, every lighting decision, every camera movement or stillness is doing specific work, creating psychological states through visual means. You feel claustrophobic because focal lengths and composition make you claustrophobic. You feel exposed because lighting and framing expose. The camera isn't just recording, it's actively constructing emotional experience. Johnson and Carnahan create a visual language where professionalism curdles into paranoia, where open spaces become traps, where light itself becomes something that reveals too much. It's cinematography as psychological pressure, each frame tightening the noose slightly more. Part 8-9, 15,709, 15,720,000 words. Matt Damon's performance as Dane Dumars operates almost entirely through suppression. Watch his face across the film's runtime. He's doing an extraordinary amount of work by doing almost nothing. Early scenes show Dumars as the competent professional, the kind of cop who doesn't waste energy on unnecessary expression. Commands are delivered calmly, decisions made without visible deliberation. It reads as confidence, as leadership honed through experience. But as the film progresses, that same stillness becomes something else entirely. The lack of expression stops reading as control and starts reading as containment. Dumars isn't calm, he's holding himself together through force of will. Damon lets micro-expressions through the facade. A flicker around his eyes when Torres mentions marked bills. The slight tightness in his jaw when Baptiste admits she's not sleeping. A breath held half second too long before answering questions. These aren't big actor moments, they're the opposite. They're a man trying desperately not to have big actor moments while his interior world collapses. The hand wrapping scene that opens the film gains retrospective weight. We thought we were watching preparation for physical confrontation. By the end, we understand it was always about armor protecting himself from impacts he knew were coming. Damon returns to that gesture throughout the film. During the counting room scene, his hands flex unconsciously as if wrapping invisible tape. Before meeting Torres at the Cuban restaurant, he stretches his fingers the same way. The physical ritual becomes a psychological tell, a comfort behavior under stress. Damon's voice work deserves attention. His natural speaking voice has a Boston working class quality. He is never fully shed despite decades of Hollywood polish. Here, he leans into it. Dumars sounds like a cop, not an actor playing one. The cadence, the clipped efficiency, the way certain words get abbreviated, it's authentic regional speech pattern. But listen to how his voice changes under pressure. It doesn't get louder or more aggressive. It gets quieter. By the grand jury testimony, he's speaking barely above a whisper, forcing prosecutors to lean in. It's not a power move. It's vocal cords constricting under stress. The scene where Dumars sits alone in his car after talking to lawyer Cohn is a masterclass in stillness. The camera holds on his face for nearly a minute. He doesn't cry, doesn't rage, just sits. Damon lets you see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing options, discarding solutions, confronting the reality that he's destroyed his life. His breathing gets slightly irregular. A muscle in his cheek twitches once, that's all. And it's devastating because the performance trusts that less is exponentially more. Ben Affleck's Byrne operates as the film's emotional counterweight. Where Dumars suppresses, Byrne processes. He's more expressive, more volatile, more visibly affected by events. This isn't because Byrne's weaker, it's because he metabolizes stress differently. Affleck plays him as someone who's always thinking 3 moves ahead, gaming out scenarios, preparing for contingencies. The mental chess game is visible in his performance. Watch Byrne during the bar scene where the theft is first discussed. Affleck's doing something fascinating. Byrne's barely participating in the conversation, but his eyes track everyone's reactions. He's reading the room, assessing who's genuinely considering this versus who's horrified, who might flip versus who'll hold. The silence isn't passivity, it's intelligence gathering. When he finally speaks, nobody saw us count that money. It lands with weight because he's waited for the perfect moment. Affleck delivers it casually, almost as an observation rather than a proposal. The calculation is invisible to other characters but visible to us. Byrne's relationship with paranoia is different than Dumars's. Dumars tries to suppress anxiety through discipline. Byrne channels it into action. The sequence where he tracks Torres, sitting in his car outside the hotel, Affleck plays it with the focus of obsession. He's not scared, he's problem solving. The stakeout isn't irrational. From Byrne's perspective, it's reconnaissance. Affleck gives him the energy of someone who thinks staying 3 steps ahead will